Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: U.S. stock markets rally before President Trump's anticipated upcoming meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. What are key sticking points the two leaders are set to discuss?
One of the things we'll talk about is the Russia-Ukraine.
President Trump plans to meet with Nvidia CEO before his in-person meeting with China's Xi, what the tech giant has promised to do here at home. President Trump and Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi declaring the golden age of their alliance while inking deals that deflect rising threats from Beijing. The president also announces new multi-billion-dollar investments.
It really is sort of this ushering in of a new golden era of U.S.-Japan alliance.
The U.S. continues its crackdown on drug traffickers trying to smuggle narcotics. The military says it struck 4 more boats in the Eastern Pacific on Tuesday. The British Prime Minister promises he won't cave in over China's proposal to build a new embassy in London. Concerns are mounting that it could serve as a spy outpost for Beijing. We take a closer look. Optimism ahead of a much-anticipated meeting. U.S. stock markets rallied on Monday as all eyes are on President Trump and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping's meeting in South Korea this Thursday. Hopes are high that they could make a trade deal. What are the major sticking points that are expected to be finalized in the deal? Here's a breakdown. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Sunday that they have achieved a trade framework for two leaders to discuss during their meeting. Under it, China would delay its export controls on rare earths for a year, and the U.S. wouldn't slap an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods. Bessent stressed that it's still up to the two leaders to discuss the final terms.
President Trump gave me a great deal of negotiating leverage with the threat of the 100% tariffs on November 1st.
Rare earths are also a major sticking point in the U.S.-China trade. U.S. automakers and defense suppliers rely on rare earth products from China. The country controls 70% of global mining and 90% of chemical processing. U.S. reliance on rare earths from China has become an Achilles heel, and the administration has been signing deals to find alternatives and build a domestic supply chain. Also to be discussed, the fentanyl crisis devastating America.
I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control.
Fentanyl is now the leading cause of death in the U.S. for people ages 18 to 45. Most fentanyl precursor chemicals come from China. In 2022, the U.S. seized enough fentanyl to kill every American. Also on the table, discussions over soybeans. China has stopped buying U.S. soybeans amid a record harvest. Prior to that, about 60% of U.S. soybean exports go to China.
And I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but I believe when the announcement of the deal with China is made public, that our soybean farmers will feel very good about what's going on, both for this season and the coming seasons for several years.
Trump also said he would talk to Xi about Russia's war on Ukraine.
One of the things we'll talk about is the Russia-Ukraine. They're killing 7,000 people a week, soldiers, mostly soldiers, and we'll certainly be talking about that. He'd like to see that as put very big sanctions on Russia. I think those sanctions are going to be, they're very biting, they're very strong, but I'd like to see China help us out.
Trump has also said that he would be discussing Taiwan with Xi. He was asked last Saturday if Beijing would make any moves on Taiwan.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I hope they won't. I think it would be very dangerous for them to do.
Are you open to changing U.S. policy on Taiwan?
Well, I don't want to talk about that now. I don't want to create any complexity.
The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China and has vowed to take it under control by force if necessary. The U.S. doesn't have diplomatic relations with Taiwan, but sells weapons to the island so it can defend itself. Trump also said that he could sign a final deal on TikTok as early as Thursday. Trump said he would also push for China to release Jimmy Lai. Lai is a media mogul and one of the most prominent critics against the CCP in Hong Kong. He founded the now shuttered pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. It remains to be seen if a deal would be made and if Beijing would make good on its promises. We'll keep you updated with the latest developments. President Trump says he plans to meet with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang on Wednesday. The meeting comes amid Trump's Asia tour before his scheduled meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping on Thursday.
We're speeding construction of AI infrastructure and bringing production of the critical chips and semiconductors back onshore, and I want to congratulate Jensen because he's been really amazing.
On Tuesday, Huang said the company would build 7 new supercomputers for the U.S. Department of Energy. Supercomputers are commonly used in AI research. Trump also praised Nvidia's announcement that it will produce Blackwell chips with TSMC here in America. Nvidia's high-end AI chips are coveted by the Chinese Communist regime. Obtaining these cutting-edge chips would be a boost for the Chinese military. Nvidia has also been caught between U.S.-China geopolitical tensions. Next, Washington's most wanted Chinese fentanyl kingpin, Zhang Dongji, has been extradited to the U.S. That's according to a post on X last Thursday by Mexico's Security Secretary. Federal courts in Atlanta and New York have both indicted Zhang. They're accusing him of leading a massive international network of drug trafficking and money laundering. U.S. authorities accused Zhang of supplying fentanyl precursors to 2 of the largest Mexican drug cartels. According to Washington, they are designated as terrorist groups. Zhang was arrested in Cuba back in July after escaping a previous arrest in Mexico. He's now in U.S. custody following interrogation by Cuban authorities. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced Tuesday that the U.S. military carried out 3 strikes in the eastern Pacific Ocean on 4 boats. The strikes killed 14 people aboard vessels accused of carrying drugs. 1 person survived. According to Hegseth, Mexican authorities assumed responsibility for coordinating his rescue. It's not clear if that person will stay in Mexican custody or be handed over to the U.S. The action marks an increase in the pace of the strikes, which began in early September. It's the first time multiple strikes were announced in a single day. A strong show of force just 2 days before President Trump's meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. Trump and Japan's new prime minister hail their alliance in front of American troops in Japan. And the president signs yet another agreement to break China's monopoly on rare earth resources. NTD's Mari Otsu brings us the latest from Tokyo.
Born out of the ashes of a terrible war, our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of peace and security in the Pacific.
Aboard the USS George Washington in Yokosuka, President Trump and Japan's newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi declare a golden age for their alliance.
This woman is a winner. So now I have a really great respect for the new and incredible Prime Minister. And I have to say this, the first female Prime Minister in the history of Japan.
Takaichi vows to take what she calls the world's greatest alliance to even greater heights.
We are facing an unprecedented severe security environment. Peace cannot be preserved by words alone, only when there is an unwavering determination and action.
Takaichi has long fought to raise Japan's defense budget and rewrite its pacifist constitution, a stance that's in alignment with President Trump's peace through strength posture.
No enemy will ever even dream of threatening America's Navy. And if they do, the American sailor stands ready to crush them and sink them and wreck them and blast them into oblivion, right?
Japan is committed to fundamentally reinforce its defense capabilities, and Japan is ready to contribute even more proactively to peace and stability of the region.
And in a move that puts steel behind that shared vision, President Trump announces the first U.S. missiles for Japan's F-45s land this week ahead of schedule.
I just want to tell Madam Prime Minister, they've been waiting for those missiles, and we got them here right away.
He also announces plans for Toyota to invest over $10 billion in the U.S.
So that's Toyota, so go out and buy a Toyota.
This comes as President Trump and Takaichi sign a rare earths framework, with both nations seeking to reduce China's monopoly in the sector, a resource that Beijing has weaponized in trade wars. Meanwhile, in soft diplomacy, Prime Minister Takaichi gifts 250 flowering cherry trees to Washington, D.C. in celebration of America's 250th birthday. And for President Trump personally, Additionally, a golf bag signed by major winner Hideki Matsuyama, plus the putter of Shinzo Abe, the late Prime Minister and President Trump's close ally, which Abe used during President Trump's Japan visit. On Wednesday, President Trump jets off for South Korea, where he'll be making remarks at APEC and speaking with South Korea's president. And then on Thursday, we have that highly anticipated meeting between President Trump and CCP leader Xi Jinping. Reporting from Tokyo, Mariotsu, NTD News.
President Trump met with business leaders in Japan Tuesday. Around 20 companies from Japan and the United States are exploring projects under Tokyo's pledge to invest $490 billion in America. Here's Trump and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick giving updates on the deals made during the trip.
We have another company that's going to be contributing at least $10 billion, and I'll give you that name later. We'll keep it a little. They wanted to do it very quietly, and that's okay with me. It could be quiet or not quiet. It's still about, I think, $18 billion. So we're very close to that.
Now you're at 518. Now you're at 518.
If you think about it. So thank you all very much. Great honor. You're great business people, my friends. Almost all of you are friends.
These deals are driven by the Japanese Strategic Investment Initiative, which was created by your tariff policy and by your historic trade agreement with Japan. So that was the underlying reason that we were able to get all these deals done today. So the commitments ensure the economic and national security of the United States of America. We're going to be developing energy. We're going to be developing nuclear, semiconductors, and strengthening the entire domestic supply chain.
Big names like SoftBank, Mitsubishi Electric, and Hitachi are among those expressing interest in fields from energy and AI infrastructure to critical minerals. Westinghouse and GE Vernova are weighing nuclear and power projects worth up to $100 billion, with major Japanese partners potentially involved. Other companies, including Panasonic, Carrier, Murata, TDK, and Fujikura, could join in building the next wave of U.S.-Japan industrial cooperation. Here's the president speaking at a reception with Japanese and U.S. business leaders at the U.S. Embassy.
In so many countries, they invest in the United States, but we've never had anything quite like what's happening, and I think it's going to get better. I can say it now. So we have over $17 trillion of investment in 8 months, and I think by the time we go to the 12-month period, we'll have over $20 or $21 trillion invested, or to be invested, very importantly. I mean, the money's coming in, and a lot of it's commitments that are incredible. Tim Cook is doing, I think, like $600 or $650 billion, right? Think of it. You've done more than the entire group here.
Trump also highlighted fast-track approvals and what he described as record regulation cuts, allowing energy and manufacturing projects to move from proposal to construction much more quickly. He cited new nuclear, oil, and gas developments, rapid growth in AI and chip production, and a national push to restore America as a manufacturing and energy powerhouse. The president called the U.S.-Japan partnership a cornerstone of mutual prosperity and Pacific security. In Japan, the man accused of fatally shooting former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pleaded guilty on Tuesday. The first hearing of the case came over 3 years after the assassination.
The man accused of fatally shooting former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe admitted to the murder on Tuesday. It comes 3 years after the assassination of Japan's longest-serving leader stunned the nation. Tetsuya Yamagami was arrested at the scene of the shooting in July 2022. He allegedly fired at Abe with a homemade gun while the former premier was giving a speech during an election campaign in the western city of Nara. Japan's public broadcaster NHK reported that Yamagami's lawyer asked for any punishment to be reduced, saying the handmade gun he used did not fall within the category of handguns defined by Japanese law. Media reports said Yamagami blamed Abe for promoting the Unification Church, a religious group against which he held a grudge, after his mother donated some $660,000 to it. The shooting was followed by revelations that more than 100 lawmakers of Abe's Liberal Democratic Party had ties to the church, driving down public support for the ruling party. A verdict is set to be handed down on January 21st.
And with President Trump's royal welcome in Japan, big developments in the economic front, from a new rare earth deal to AI. Joining us to unpack the latest in U.S.-Japan relations is Riley Walters, Senior Fellow in International Economics and National Security at the Hudson Institute. Riley Walters, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
glad to be here.
Now, with President Trump heaping praise on Takaichi and the gifts she gave him, the royal welcome, the bunch of deals they signed, what stood out to you the most, though, out of this visit?
Well, I think it's safe to say that the diplomacy hurdle has been cleared. I mean, the president and the prime minister, they're getting along well. They spent so much time together on this trip that it really is sort of this ushering in of a new golden era of U.S.-Japan alliance. I think the takeaways from the meeting, the announcements on new cooperation on critical minerals, shipbuilding, artificial intelligence, I think those are also above and beyond really what was expected of this trip. I think a lot of people thought that Trump would go and sort of shake hands with the prime minister, shake hands with the emperor, and it would be a really good photo op, but it's delivering much more than that.
I want to dig into that because there is, to your point, a lot on the economic front. There was about 20 companies from the U.S. and Japan that showed interest in that $550 billion investment, according to a fact sheet from both countries. There was also the rare earth deals, as you indicated, as well as a deal on new generation nuclear power reactors, a lot on energy and also AI, of course. Given, though, that Communist China does corner the market for the processing and refining of rare earths, and they just indicated an increase in export controls, how exactly will this rare earth element of the deal work?
Well, it's going to be a little tricky. I would say this is really looking at diversifying their supply chain. Japan has a good experience with this. Over a decade ago, China did the same thing to Japan and really opened up Tokyo's eyes to the risks of relying too much on China as a source for rare earth materials. And so since then, they've really been looking at diversifying away, partnering with new countries, Malaysia, Australia, Vietnam, and others to really diversify their own supply chain. And so this is actually, I think, a learning curve for the United States now. We're actually, in a way, looking to the Japanese to help the United States learn how to diversify its supply chain away from China. We are, I think, on a pathway to a more resilient society, if that makes sense.
Now, this was one of several stops President Trump is making. He also signed another rare earth deal recently, and there's, of course, the other one with Australia heading into this. And then he's now in South Korea, where everyone's watching for that anticipated face-to-face meeting with China's Xi Jinping. Given the record of all these deals that Trump is now bringing with him, if you will, before he meets, as expected, with Xi Jinping, how much leverage do you see that bringing to a potential trade deal?
Probably not as much as you might think. I think it does offer the president some leverage. It definitely hits a lot of his own domestic promises and a lot of his domestic demands here. He's getting the two things he really wants. He's getting trade deals and he's keeping high levels of tariffs. I think the Chinese understand that a lot of these agreements will take many years to actualize. They in the short term, they still have a strong grip, a strong monopoly almost on a lot of these material processing and the machines that go into the processing as well. So even if there are potential mines in other countries, the investments to build up the facilities to process those mines, it's a long term. And so it's not going to be really, there's going to be, I think, quite more back and forth in this meeting. And I'm really looking forward to what's covered, because it really seems like a lot of topics besides rare earth could be involved in this meeting with Xi Jinping and Trump. But I think Trump is going in there with a stronger hand than perhaps he did a week ago.
Definitely a lot to watch for here. Riley Walters, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you.
Coming up, the British Prime Minister promises he won't cave in over China's proposal to build a new embassy in London. Concerns are mounting that it could serve as a spy outpost for Beijing. We take a closer look. As President Trump prepares to meet Xi Jinping, Taiwan is watching closely. Taiwan's foreign minister insists relations with Washington remain strong. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Turning now to UK-China relations. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he won't be pushed around by Beijing over China's controversial plan to build a super embassy in London. Why is this project creating tension with British authorities, and what could happen inside the proposed Chinese facility? NTD's Flora Huang has the story.
China has used all means to pressure London to approve its embassy proposal. Otherwise, it warned that the UK will face, quote, all consequences. Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping personally brought it up to Starmer last year. Earlier this month, the Daily Mail reported that Beijing had cut off its water supplies to the British embassy in town. That's on top of halting the embassy's renovation to pressure the UK government. Back in 2018, China spent nearly $300 million to purchase this site, aiming to build the largest foreign embassy in Europe. So what controversies are hindering UK authorities from giving Beijing the green light? First, let's zoom in on its location. Fiber optic cables connecting London's financial hubs run underneath the site. The UK's biggest telecom company, the British Telecom Group, also has an exchange center right next to the site that houses underground cables. Experts warn that an espionage method called fiber cable tapping requires listeners to have physical access to cables. And Beijing's submitted floor plan includes a spacious basement, giving it the opportunity to intercept countless messages running through the data hub every day. On top of that, China's blueprint includes some mysterious gray rooms. Beijing has refused to answer London officials' questions about what it plans to do with them. The Chinese embassy, if built, can host hundreds of diplomats and staffers. Critics and local residents worry it could serve as an outpost for Chinese spies and even be used to persecute Chinese dissidents behind closed doors. In 2022, a Hong Kong protester was dragged into a Chinese consulate in Manchester and brutally assaulted by 6 Chinese diplomats. Beijing summoned them back before local police could investigate them. The plan to build the new Chinese embassy has been delayed for the second time, now set for December. This comes as Starmer's administration juggles its economic relations with China and the mounting national security concerns. Flora Hua, NTD News.
On Tuesday, Starmer visited the UK aerospace company, who recently signed a deal to sell 20 fighter jets to Turkey. The deal, worth over $10 billion, is a sign of the West Asian country's deepening ties with its NATO allies. Taiwan says its relationship with the U.S. is stable and that there is close cooperation between the two sides. The island's foreign minister made the remarks Tuesday ahead of President Trump's meeting this week with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
Because our Taiwan-U.S. relations are very stable. No matter whether on security, trade and business and other areas, there is close cooperation. We're a member of APEC and have a representative to participate the APEC summit.
Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te said Tuesday that Israel is a model for the island nation to learn from in strengthening its defenses. He cited the biblical story of David versus Goliath on the need to stand up to authoritarianism. He added that appeasement has never been the way to stop authoritarian governments. Lai says the concept of peace through strength is a maxim that Israel, U.S., and Taiwanese societies have had for years. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.